going to take our capital back.
Trump has promised new steps to tackle homelessness and crime in Washington, prompting the city's mayor to voice concerns about the potential use of the National Guard to patrol the streets. For Trump, the effort to take over public safety in Washington reflects a next step in his law enforcement agenda, after his aggressive push to stop illegal border crossings. But the move involves at least 500 federal law enforcement officials, raising fundamental questions about how an increasingly emboldened federal government will interact with its state and local counterparts.
Yep, as you heard, President Donald Trump has deployed 800 National Guard troops to Washington, D.C., starting just a few days ago on the 12th, to address what he calls a public safety emergency involving crime and homelessness. Now, what precipitated this is one of Elon Musk's Doge workers, I believe he's 22-year-old young man who goes by, and I swear this is not a joke, Big Balls. That's his name. That's his name. I don't think that's what his mama named him, but that's what he's called. Big Balls was robbed and beat up by some teenagers in Washington, D.C. last week. And so Donald Trump and the Republicans have now decided that their latest plan to distract people from the Epstein files and the fact that Donald Trump was best friends with the world's preeminent and most infamous sex trafficker for over a decade is to now claim he's going to take over all the major cities of America because they're all crime-ridden cesspools. And it just so happens that most of these cities have black mayors. I'm sure that's completely coincidental. So he called in the National Guard to address what he called a safety emergency involving crime and homelessness. He has also temporarily federalized the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. He's taken over the police department of Washington, D.C. He has placed it under control of Attorney General Pam Bondi, who herself is covering up what's going on with the Epstein files. She herself said that she had thousands of hours of footage of Jeffrey Epstein and people molesting young girls, and now all of a sudden that has absolutely no relevance whatsoever. So this woman who can't do anything about the world's most preeminent pedophile network is now over Washington, D.C.'s police department. They have stated that their goal is to take our capital back. I mean, have you guys ever noticed that these people are always talking about taking something back? Where did it go? Where did it go? I'm just asking. They're going to take the capital back by cracking down on crime, clearing homeless encampments, and restoring order, with Trump citing incidents like the assault on a Department of Government Efficiency staffer as the justification. That was Big Balls. Big Balls got assaulted, and so now we all have to suffer. Now, Trump has claimed that Washington, D.C. is plagued by violent crime, describing it as a hellscape. However, the data shows that violent crime is down 26% in 2025 in comparison to 2024. And 2024 was a 30-year low, with homicides down 32%, robberies down 39%. Carjackings were down 53% in 2025. I mean, in 2024, I'm sorry. So again, we have this racist narrative that comes from the right. Notice, They will always tell you that they don't believe the crime data when it says that crime is going down. They never doubt it. But when you tell them that crime is going up, they never doubt that. They never doubt when crime is going up, but they'll always doubt when crime is going down. Again, this is the hallmark of racist white supremacist thinking. Their thinking is black people live here in the urban centers of America, so crime must always be out of control because black people are always out of control. They take a few cherry-picked videos on the internet, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and somehow extrapolate that is the entirety of the city's, the experience of living in that city. I saw a few kids on Facebook jump somebody and rob them. Therefore, everybody who's in this city is getting robbed. You see, they do this with Chicago all the time. They do this with Gary all the time. Just go on Google Gary, Indiana. If you Google Gary, Indiana, you're bound to see some of the most racist narratives that you will ever see in your life. These people will always, and I mean always, push the most racist narratives about our communities, about our cities. I tell people all the time, and I've had to argue with a lot of you, a lot of black people, so-called black people about this. This is why I always bring this up. This is why I talk about this a lot. Because this is what this is for. This is why they're constantly telling us that crime is at an all-time high. So that they can manufacture consent to have troops in our cities murdering and brutalizing black people and arresting black people who haven't even done anything. And a lot of you would go along with it because you believe all of the narratives. Now, does that mean that crime is great? No. America is a lot more violent than any other first world country. That is a fact. England, France, Germany, Canada, Switzerland, Australia, America has always been a lot more violent since at least the last 120 years, 150 years, than European and other first world countries. Hell, Japan. I mean, Japan virtually has no violent crime. So yes, in comparison to other countries in the world, you're right. America is very violent in comparison to other countries. But I compare America to America. America was a much more violent place in the 1990s when I was growing up here in the city of Gary. I always tell the story. We had a murder rate higher than Mexico in the 90s. I've seen multiple dead bodies growing up. I grew up I went to school in the Valley at Emerson. And we used to have nothing but abandoned buildings surrounding our school. And violent gangbangers, standing outside waiting to, possibly attack us. I'm not even going to talk about how some of the young women who I knew, had experiences, unfortunate experiences in that area. That's what America was like back then, during the crack era of the late 80s, the early to mid 90s. We are nowhere near that at this point. What crime we have now in comparison to where we were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago is relatively minor. That's just facts. But once again, the right wing, self-hating black people will always perpetrate this idea, this narrative that crime is always the worst it's ever been to justify a crackdown on black people. This idea that our communities are always out of control and we need the government to come in. Now, the government can't give us health care. The government can't give us housing, like decent housing, at least. But they can sure as hell come in and brutalize us, shoot us, and put us in jail. Make it make sense. And so not only are the troops there to supposedly keep things safe, they're there to help with logistics, crowd management, and perimeter security. That's what the National Guard is there for. They are going to visible landmarks like the Washington Monument. The deployment under Title 32 status is federally funded but locally commanded and may last up to 30 days unless it is extended. And this might be the most morally repugnant part of what is happening here. Donald Trump has vowed to remove homeless encampments from public spaces, directing people to shelters or mental health facilities. Over 100 arrests and 24 gun seizures have been reported in the initial phase. Critics like the National Homelessness Law Center argue this approach actually worsens homelessness without addressing the root cause. Now, on this show, we've actually talked about this a few months ago. We talked about how Finland, one of the happiest countries in the world, cured homelessness. Who wants to know how Finland cured homelessness? Huh? Who wants to know how they did it? They gave people homes. That's how they did it. They gave people homes. And got them counseling. And within a few months, most of the homeless people had jobs and had gotten back on their feet. But our system here in this country is based on teaching us to have nothing but disdain and to despise the poor, to despise people who have drug problems, to despise people who have alcohol. For such a Christian nation, we have a much crueler legal system and a much crueler way of dealing with the poor and the working class than just about any first world country. Our way of dealing with everything other than wealthy, rich, mostly white people is cruelty. Throw them in jail, have the police beat them, disregard their rights. They don't have anything. They're basically not human. We closed our mental health asylum, so we have plenty of people who should be getting the mental health that they need and deserve. They are walking the streets. Thanks to people like Ronald Reagan in California. Ronald Reagan was the first one in California to start closing all the mental institutions, the mental hospitals. Then when he became president, we started doing that all around the country, closing the mental hospitals. So we have plenty of people walking around. We have 23 troops who commit suicide every day in this country. We have a disproportionate amount of troops, people who fight America's endless wars all over the Middle East, who are homeless. But they love our troops so much. Huh? They love our troops so much. Keep them fighting and then just discard them and let them end up on the streets or let them kill themselves. Of course, Mayor Muriel Bowser of Washington, D.C., and the Democrats are calling Donald Trump's moves unsettling and a power grab, arguing that crime is already declining and deployment wastes resources. All true. All true. That's a big part of what this is about. It is a power grab. Birmingham, Alabama is more dangerous than Washington, D.C. but magically you see Donald Trump is not going to bring the troops there. I wonder why. Trump is only targeting major Democratic strongholds, and often places that are majority black and often have black governors or black mayors. Black mayors. Like he's talking about doing this in Chicago, New York, L.A., what he did to Karen Bass out there in L.A. When you understand what the true motives of this is about, you understand that this is not about crime at all. This is a fascist power grab. And this is about, again, giving the police another excuse to brutalize and murder as many black people as possible, or incarcerate as many black people as possible. And more importantly, it's important to understand that just 24 hours after doing all this, talking about crime, the Trump administration gave Ghislaine Maxwell permission to leave her already low security prison for work assignments. This woman was Jeffrey Epstein's henchwoman, personally molested hundreds, maybe thousands of young girls. I played the audio not too long ago of the young girls talking about the things that Ghislaine Maxwell did to them. Donald Trump wishes her well, may pardon her, and now has worked out a deal with her to allow her to leave a low security prison. And he has the nerve to talk about being tough on crime. This is not about crime, folks. And it's important to understand. And this is why I argue with so many people about the Clinton crime bill and about Richard Nixon's war on drugs starting in the 70s and Reagan ramping it up in the 80s. It was never about crime. These things are never about crime. If they truly cared about crime, they'd look around the world and understand that other first world countries have things like universal health care, often universal education through college. They have social safety nets. They have better worker protections. They have, they provide jobs for the youth, for younger people. You look at the happiest, healthiest, most educated societies on earth. They are societies that take care of their people. America does none of that. Because they don't want to. Our system is based on exploitation, having a permanently exploitable base of cheap labor, of people to fill privately owned prisons, and to have a constant boogeyman. And a cautionary tale as well. Americans know that they can end up being homeless. And so you better not talk back to your boss. You better not demand the type of worker protections they have in Denmark, in Finland, in Switzerland, in England, in France, in Germany, Australia, Canada. You better not ask for any of that. Because you can end up on the streets. You could be like these people. Only difference is you live in the richest, most powerful country in the world. Think about that. You live in the richest, most powerful country in the world, and all they tell you is that they can't do any of the things for you that other countries that have far less wealth, far less influence do for their citizens on a regular basis. This is how they do it. This is how they do it. Fear-mongering, racial scapegoating, and exploitation. All right, folks. It's 6:38 already. All right, folks, I got to get to a break. But when we come back, We're going to talk about artificial intelligence and how you may have to watch what your computer's up to. We'll be right back after these.